The massive ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. It was the size of a small moon, silver and gleaming in the sunlight. People around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Some were afraid. Some were excited. Most were just confused. The ship belonged to the Velkari, a race of aliens who looked like tall, thin creatures with blue skin and large black eyes. They had been watching Earth for 50 years, studying humans from a distance. They knew about human wars, human art, human music, and human problems. They thought they understood everything about humans. They were wrong. On the third day after their arrival, the Velkari sent a message to Earth. They wanted to meet with human leaders at the International Space Station. The message was formal and polite, translated into every major language on Earth. It said they came in peace and wanted to discuss trade. The world leaders chose Ambassador Sarah Chen to represent humanity. She was smart, calm, and had years of experience in difficult negotiations. She spoke 5 languages and had worked in almost every country on Earth. If anyone could handle meeting aliens for the first time, it was her. Ambassador Chen arrived at the space station with a small team. When the Velkari shuttle docked, she was there to greet them. The leader of the alien delegation was named Trade Harmonizer Zelvex. He was taller than any human, with robes that seemed to shimmer in the light. Behind him stood a dozen assistants carrying electronic tablets and devices. Zelvex bowed slightly, which Chen learned was their way of showing respect. "Greetings, Ambassador Chen," Zelvex said through his translation device. His voice was smooth but had a strange echo to it. "We are honored to finally meet humanity. We represent the Galactic Commerce Collective, a union of 10,000 species across 47 galaxies. We have come to welcome Earth into our community." Chen smiled warmly. "We're honored to meet you as well. Please, let's sit down and talk." They moved to a conference room that had been specially prepared for the meeting. The room had large windows showing Earth below, beautiful and blue. Zelvex and his team sat on one side of a long table. Chen and her team sat on the other. Zelvex activated a holographic display. Images of alien worlds, amazing technology, and vast space stations appeared in the air between them. For millions of years, the Galactic Commerce Collective has brought civilization to new worlds, Zelvex explained. "We offer advanced technology, medical knowledge, and protection from dangerous species in the galaxy. In return, we ask only for access to certain resources that are unique to each planet." One of his assistants placed a thick document on the table. It was printed on some kind of glowing paper and was at least 3,000 pages long. "This is our standard trade agreement," Zelvex continued. "It has been refined over countless generations. Every new species signs this contract. It is written in standard galactic legal code, but we have provided a translation for your convenience." Chen picked up the document and flipped through a few pages. It was filled with complex legal terms and technical language. She noticed that most of it seemed very one-sided. The aliens would provide technology, but humans would have to give them exclusive rights to mine Earth's oceans. They would also need permission to process gases from Earth's atmosphere. "These resources are abundant on your planet and will regenerate naturally," Zelvex assured her. "The amount we require is minimal. Your species will hardly notice any difference." Chen set the document down and looked at Zelvex directly. "This is very generous of you," she said. "But I need to ask, how long does it usually take for new species to review this contract?" Zelvex seemed confused by the question. "Review it? Most species sign immediately. The benefits are obvious and the terms are standard." "There is nothing to review." Chen nodded slowly. "I see. Well, humans like to read things carefully before we agree to them. Would it be okay if we took a short break? Maybe an hour or 2. We'd like to look over this document with our legal team." The Velkari assistants looked at each other. Several of them made quiet clicking sounds, which Chen's team later learned was their way of expressing surprise. Zelvex's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. "A break?" Zelvex asked. "You wish to wait before accepting?" "Yes, just for a little while," Chen said cheerfully. "Also, I haven't had my coffee yet this morning. Would you like some?" It's a human drink. Very popular on Earth. Zelvex was completely confused now. In his entire career as a trade harmonizer, he had met with hundreds of new species. Every single one had been desperate to sign the contract. They always wanted the advanced technology immediately. They never asked for breaks. They never offered him strange drinks. "Coffee?" He repeated the word carefully. "It's delicious. Trust me, Chen said, standing up. We'll be back in 2 hours. That should give us enough time to read through the basics. She and her team left the room, leaving Zelvex and the Velkari sitting in stunned silence. After they were gone, one of Zelvex's assistants spoke up. Harmonizer, this is unprecedented. Should we report this behavior to the council? Zelvex stared at the door where the humans had left. Not yet. Perhaps this is a cultural difference. Perhaps they are simply being cautious. We will wait and see. But deep inside, Zelvex felt something he had never felt before when dealing with a new species. He felt uncertain. 2 hours later, Ambassador Chen returned. She was carrying a steaming cup of coffee and looked very relaxed. Her legal team followed behind her, and they were all smiling. Zelvex and his team were still sitting exactly where they had been, waiting patiently. Thank you for your patience, Chen said as she sat down. We've reviewed your contract. It's very detailed and impressive. Zelvex relaxed slightly. Excellent. Then you are ready to sign? Not exactly, Chen said. She pulled out a thin folder and placed it on the table. We've prepared our own proposal. It's much shorter, only 5 pages. The clicking sounds from the Velkari assistants grew louder. Zelvex picked up the human document and stared at it. 5 pages. In all of galactic history, no new species had ever presented their own contract. They always accepted the collective's terms. Always Zelvex began to read. The more he read, the more confused he became. The humans were not asking to be clients of the Galactic Commerce Collective. They were asking to be equal partners. They wanted a seat on the council. They wanted to vote on decisions. And strangest of all, they were not offering resources like minerals or gases. They were offering something called entertainment, art, culture, and creative problem-solving services. What is this? Zelvex finally asked. Chen smiled. It's what we call a counter-offer. We're very interested in joining your collective, but we'd like to do it as equals, not as junior members, and we think we have a lot to offer that might interest you. But entertainment, art? Zelvex looked at his assistants for help, but they seemed just as confused as he was. These are not resources. These are not valuable commodities. They are to us, Chen said, and we think they might be valuable to you too once you experience them. Zelvex set the document down carefully. This was not going the way he had expected. Not at all. I will need to discuss this with the council, he said finally. Of course, Chen said. Take all the time you need. As the Velkari prepared to leave, one of Chen's assistants handed Zelvex a small container. What is this? Zelvex asked. Coffee, Chen said with a warm smile. Something to think about while you review our proposal. Zelvex took the container and left, his mind spinning with confusion and doubt. As his shuttle flew back to the massive ship, he looked at Earth below. The blue planet suddenly seemed much more mysterious than it had before. Maybe humans were different after all. Back on the Velkari command ship, Zelvex sat in his private quarters and stared at the container of coffee. He had never been so confused in his entire life. As a trade harmonizer, he had successfully negotiated with over 300 different species. Every negotiation followed the same pattern. Every species reacted the same way, until now. He opened the container carefully and sniffed the dark liquid inside. It smelled strange but somehow pleasant. He took a small sip. The taste was bitter, but there was something else to it. Something interesting. He took another sip and felt a strange warmth spread through his body. His mind felt sharper somehow, more alert. This was coffee. This was what humans valued enough to pause important negotiations for. Zelvex called a meeting with his senior advisors. They gathered in the ship's main conference room, all of them looking worried. The humans have rejected our standard offer. One advisor said, This has never happened before. We should report this to the council immediately. We will, Zelvex said. But first I want to understand what the humans are offering. He displayed the human counter-proposal on the holographic screen. His team read through it in silence. Entertainment, another advisor said with confusion. Stories that are not real. Images that move. Sounds organized into patterns. These things have no practical value. And yet they value them highly, Zelvex said. Look at this data they have provided. Humans spend billions of their currency units on entertainment every year. It is one of their largest industries, but why? An advisor asked. What purpose does it serve? Zelvex did not have an answer. But something about the human proposal made him curious. Before reporting to the council, he wanted to investigate further. Send a message to the humans, he ordered. Ask them to provide examples of this entertainment they speak of. 3 days later, Ambassador Chen arrived at the Valkyrie ship with a large storage device. Zelvex met her in the conference room. Thank you for your interest in our culture, Chen said warmly. I have brought samples of human entertainment. Movies, music, books, games, and more. Movies, Zelvex repeated the unfamiliar word. Stories told through moving pictures and sound, Chen explained. They make you feel emotions. They make you think about life in new ways. Would you like to watch one? Zelvex was skeptical, but he agreed. Chen set up the equipment and selected a movie. It was a simple story about a human family facing difficulties and eventually overcoming them together. Nothing special. Nothing scientifically valuable. But as Zelvex watched, something strange happened. He found himself caring about the characters. When they struggled, he felt concerned. When they succeeded, he felt satisfied. When the story ended, he realized he wanted more. This is unusual, he said quietly. That was just one movie, Chen said with a smile. We have millions more. Different genres, different styles, different emotions, and that is just movies. We also have music, books, video games, art, and more. Over the next week, Zelvex and his team experienced human culture. They listened to music that made them feel things they had no words for. They read books that told stories about people who never existed but felt completely real. They played games that challenged their minds in ways different from logic puzzles. One evening, Zelvex found himself laughing. Actually laughing. It was such a strange sound that his assistants came running to check if he was okay. He had been watching something humans called a comedy show, but the biggest surprise came when Chen mentioned something casual during a meeting. By the way, she said, our engineers have been studying those observation probes you had watching Earth. Very sophisticated technology. We have been tracking them for about 15 years. Zelvex felt his blood turn cold. You knew about our observation probes? Of course, Chen said, as if it was obvious. We detected them years ago. We have been letting them watch because we figured you meant no harm. But we also studied them. She pulled out a tablet and showed him technical diagrams. Zelvex stared in shock. The humans had not just detected the probes. They had completely analyzed them. They understood how the technology worked. In fact, Chen continued, we found a few ways to improve the design. Your energy efficiency could be better. We managed to increase it by about 23% in our prototypes. She showed him more data. The humans had taken Valkyrie technology and made it better. Species that were just discovering space travel were not supposed to be able to do this. They were supposed to be in awe of advanced technology, not improving upon it. Zelvex realized he needed to report to the council immediately. This was far more serious than he had thought. The Galactic Commerce Council met in a massive virtual space. Representatives from thousands of species appeared as holographic projections. At the center sat the Council of Elders, the oldest and most powerful members of the collective. Zelvex presented his report. He showed them the human counter-proposal. He showed them the entertainment samples. He showed them the improved probe designs. The council chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, Elder Crixanon spoke. She was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy, her species having joined the collective millions of years ago. This is unprecedented, she said, her voice like wind through metal. No new species has ever refused client status. No new species has ever improved our technology upon first contact. The humans are different, Zelvex said. They think differently. They value things we do not understand. But I believe they might be valuable allies, not just clients. Another elder spoke up, his tone harsh. Or they might be dangerous. A species that refuses to follow established protocols could disrupt the entire collective. I propose a test, Elder Crixanon said. Let us see if humans can truly contribute something valuable to the collective. There is a problem that has vexed us for 400 years. If the humans can solve it, we will consider their proposal for equal partnership. What problem? Zelvex asked. The Zarkoth and Luminary dispute, Crixanon said. Two species that have been in conflict for centuries. They refuse to trade with each other. They refuse to cooperate. Every mediator we have sent has failed. If humans are so clever, let them try to solve it. Zelvex felt his heart sink. The Zarkoth and Luminary dispute was legendary in the collective. Hundreds of the best diplomats had tried to resolve it. All had failed. The council was setting humans up to fail. But he had no choice. He had to give the humans this chance. When Zelvex told Ambassador Chen about the test, he expected her to be worried. He expected her to ask for more time or different terms. Instead, she smiled. "A 400-year-old dispute?" she said. "That sounds interesting. When can we meet them?" "Ambassador Chen," Zelvex said carefully, "you should understand. This is an impossible task. The Council expects you to fail. They are testing whether humanity is worthy of partnership." "I understand," Chen said, "but we humans like to try the impossible sometimes. It keeps life interesting." She paused and looked at her tablet. "I will need to bring a specific team with me. Not all diplomats. Some different people." "Different people?" Zelvex was confused again. "Yes," Chen said with that warm smile that Zelvex was starting to recognize. "I will need a chef, a musician, a comedian, a therapist, and yes, one actual diplomat." "A chef? A comedian?" Zelvex felt completely lost. What do these people have to do with resolving a diplomatic conflict? "Everything," Chen said. "Trust me." As Chen left to prepare, Zelvex sat down and took another sip of coffee. He was starting to understand why humans valued this drink. It helped calm the mind when nothing made sense anymore, and nothing about humans made sense. The neutral meeting station floated in empty space, exactly halfway between Zarkoth territory and Luminari space. It had been built specifically for failed peace negotiations. Over 400 years, the station had seen countless meetings, all ending in frustration. The Zarkoth were insectoid creatures, each one the size of a small vehicle. They had hard shells, multiple arms, and communicated through clicking sounds and chemical signals. They were warriors and believed strongly in honor and strength. The Luminari were pure energy beings who existed as glowing clouds of light. They experienced reality differently than physical beings, sensing electromagnetic fields and quantum states. They valued knowledge and precision above all else. These two species could not be more different, and they absolutely refused to work together. When Ambassador Chen arrived with her unusual team, the galaxy was watching. The meeting was being broadcast to every member species of the collective. Everyone wanted to see how badly the humans would fail. Zelvex had come along as an observer. He stood with Chen as they prepared to enter the main hall. "Are you certain about this approach?" he asked quietly. "Not certain," Chen admitted, "but confident. Trust the process." The human team entered the hall. With Chen was Marcus, the chef. He was carrying several containers of equipment. Lisa was the jazz musician, holding a strange instrument called a saxophone. David was the comedian, looking relaxed and casual. Dr. Sarah Park was the therapist, with kind eyes and a calm presence. And finally, James was the actual diplomat who looked nervous. The Zarkoth delegation sat on one side of the massive room. Their leader, War Chief Krixtal, was enormous even by Zarkoth standards. The Luminari floated on the other side, their leader a being called Thought Pattern 712. Both sides looked at the humans with what could only be described as disgust. If this was the best the collective could offer, they were wasting their time again. Ambassador Chen walked to the center of the room and smiled. "Thank you both for coming," she said warmly. "I know you have been through many of these meetings before. I promise this one will be different." "Different?" Krixtal clicked aggressively. "The Luminari are unreasonable. They refuse to acknowledge proper respect. There is nothing different to discuss. The Zarkoth are illogical." Pattern 712 responded in a voice like chiming bells. "They prioritize emotion over fact. Negotiation is impossible." "I see," Chen said. "Well, we humans have found that difficult conversations work better over food. So instead of a formal negotiation, we are going to have a dinner party." The silence that followed was complete. Even the Luminari, who did not have mouths, seemed somehow speechless. "A what?" Krixtal finally asked. "A dinner party," Chen repeated. "Marcus here is one of Earth's finest chefs. He has studied your biology and culture. He has prepared food that both of your species can consume and enjoy. We will eat together, talk casually, and see what happens." "This is absurd," Pattern 712 said. "Probably," Chen agreed cheerfully. "But you have tried serious negotiations for 400 years. Maybe it is time to try something absurd." To everyone's surprise, Krixtal made a sound that might have been laughter. "The human has spirit very well." "I will try your absurd dinner party." The Luminari took longer to agree, but eventually curiosity won out. Marcus set up a long table in the center of the room. He brought out dishes that he had carefully designed. For the Zarkoth, he prepared a protein-rich paste that matched their dietary needs, but was seasoned with earth spices. For the Luminari, he created an electromagnetic field generator that produced specific frequencies they could absorb as nutrition, but mixed with harmonics that were pleasing to their senses. As they began to eat, Lisa started playing her saxophone. The music was soft and jazzy, filling the room with sound. It was improvised, changing and flowing naturally. Krixtal paused in his eating. "What is this sound?" "Music," Chen said. "Organized sound that creates emotion and atmosphere." "It is pleasant," Krixtal admitted. "The frequencies are mathematically interesting," Pattern 712 added. "There are patterns within the chaos." As the meal continued, David the comedian began telling stories. They were funny stories about human mistakes and misunderstandings. He made fun of himself and other humans. He made both the Zarkoth and Luminari understand that humans did not take themselves too seriously. Something remarkable happened. The Zarkoth began to relax. The Luminari became less rigid. The atmosphere in the room changed from hostile to merely uncomfortable to almost friendly. Then Dr. Park, the therapist, began asking gentle questions. "War Chief Krixtal," she said softly, "can you tell me about the first time your people met the Luminari?" "Not the trade dispute. The very first contact." Krixtal was quiet for a moment. "It was 437 years ago. My ancestor, War Chief Krixvan, led an exploration mission. We encountered a Luminary scout ship. We tried to communicate. We offered gifts according to our tradition. They ignored us. They simply scanned us and left. It was the greatest insult in our culture." Pattern 712. Dr. Park turned to the Luminary. "What do your records say about that first contact?" "Our scout recorded the encounter," the Luminary said. "The Zarkoth ship approached aggressively. Our scout was alone and outnumbered. Protocol required scanning for threat assessment and immediate departure. We did not understand they were offering peace. We thought they were preparing to attack." Krixtal turned to face the Luminary directly. "You thought we were attacking? Your approach pattern matched military formations. Your ship was heavily armed. What else should we have thought? We are always armed. That is our way. But we were offering the greeting of 7 gifts. It is our highest honor. We did not know this. Our species had never encountered the concept of ritual gift-giving." Dr. Park leaned forward. "So this entire 400-year dispute began with a cultural misunderstanding. Both species were silent. Around the galaxy, billions of beings watched in shock as the truth emerged. All this time, all this conflict was because of a simple mistake made centuries ago. But there is more," Pattern 712 said. "After that incident, the Zarkoth refused all communication. We tried to reach out to explain, but we received no response." "Because you insulted our war chief," Krixtal said. "When one is insulted, the offending party must apologize formally. You never did. We did not know we had caused insult, and we do not have a concept of apology in our culture. We simply correct errors and move forward." James, the actual diplomat, finally spoke up. "It sounds like you both have valid perspectives based on your own cultures. Neither of you did anything wrong intentionally. You were just being yourselves." Chen stood up and walked between the two delegations. "Here is what I see. The Zarkoth value honor and formal respect. The Luminary value logic and direct action. Both of these are good values. But when you only see through your own cultural lens, you cannot understand each other." She turned to Krixtal. "War Chief, if the Luminary had understood your gift-giving tradition, do you believe they would have responded differently?" "Yes," Krixtal admitted. "Any honorable species would have." And Pattern 712, Chen turned to the Luminari. "If you had known that leaving without acknowledgement was a grave insult in Zarkoth culture, would you have done something different?" "Logically, yes. Causing unnecessary offense is inefficient." "Then the solution is simple," Chen said. "You both need to acknowledge the misunderstanding and choose to move forward together." "But 400 years," Krixtal said. "So much time wasted." "So make the next 400 years better," David the comedian said, making everyone turn to him. "We humans have a saying. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." Pattern 712 pulsed with light. "That is actually logical." Krixtal stood up slowly. He approached the Luminari and performed a complex gesture with his multiple arms. "This is the greeting of 7 gifts that my ancestor tried to offer yours. I offer it now. with understanding and hope for peace. Pattern 712 brightened. I accept your greeting, and I offer a formal statement of regret for the misunderstanding of 437 years ago. It was not our intention to cause insult. The room erupted in light and sound. The two species began talking, really talking for the first time in centuries. They discovered they had much in common. They found ways to work together. Within 72 hours, they had signed a comprehensive trade and cooperation agreement. Zelvex stood in the corner, watching in complete shock. 400 years of conflict resolved in 3 days, with food, music, jokes, and therapy. Maybe humans really were different after all. The Galactic Commerce Council had no choice. After humans solved the impossible Zarkoth and Luminari dispute, they had to grant humanity provisional membership. But they did so with heavy restrictions. Humans could trade, but only within certain limits. They could participate in council meetings, but could not vote on major decisions. Ambassador Chen accepted these terms with her usual warm smile. She knew that real change takes time. What happened next shocked the entire galaxy. Humans began trading their cultural exports. Movies, music, books, games, and art flooded into alien markets. At first, most species were skeptical. These were just entertainment. They had no practical value. But then something strange happened. Aliens started watching human movies and could not stop. They listened to human music and found themselves feeling emotions they had never named before. They read human books and discovered new ways of thinking about their own lives. Within 6 months, human culture became the hottest commodity in the galaxy. Aliens were obsessed with something they called stories. The concept of fiction, tales that were not real but carried emotional truth, was completely new to most species. The Velkari, who had always been logical and calculating, found themselves crying at romantic movies. The Zarkoth warriors discovered they loved action films. The Luminari became fascinated with human philosophy books. Humans opened the first galactic restaurant on the trading station Nexus Prime. Chef Marcus was put in charge. He created fusion, cuisine that combined Earth ingredients with alien foods. Species that had never enjoyed eating before suddenly looked forward to meals. They opened a bar where Lisa played jazz every night. Aliens from across the galaxy came to listen and drink strange human beverages. They opened a comedy club where David performed, teaching aliens how to laugh at themselves. The oldest members of the Galactic Commerce Council watched all this with growing concern. Human influence was spreading too fast. It was changing their carefully organized society in ways they could not control. A group of traditional species formed a coalition called the Sovereign Collective. They believed the old ways were best. They did not like how humans were changing things, and they decided to do something about it. The Sovereign Collective created an economic crisis. They manipulated the Helix Exchange, the largest market in the galaxy, causing it to crash. Trillions of credits were lost. Thousands of businesses failed. Chaos spread across multiple systems. Then they planted evidence that pointed to human traitors. They made it look like humans had used insider information to profit from the crash while everyone else lost money. The accusations spread quickly. News channels across the galaxy reported that humans had manipulated the market. Public opinion turned against Earth. Species that had loved human culture now felt betrayed. The penalty for economic manipulation was severe. Permanent expulsion from the collective and complete planetary quarantine. Earth would be cut off from the galaxy forever. Zelvex rushed to find Ambassador Chen as soon as he heard the news. He found her in her office, calmly drinking coffee and reading reports. "Ambassador, this is a disaster," he said, his voice strained. "You have been accused of market manipulation. The evidence looks very bad. You must defend yourselves immediately." Chen looked up and smiled. "Hello, Zelvex. Would you like some coffee? You look stressed." "Coffee? Ambassador, your entire species is about to be expelled from the galaxy." "I know," Chen said calmly, "which is why we need to stay calm and think clearly. Here is what we are going to do. We will call for an open investigation." "An open investigation? But the evidence against you is very strong." "Exactly," Chen said. "We want everyone to see everything. We will volunteer to have all human communications monitored. We will invite investigators to Earth to examine our economic systems. Complete transparency. Zelvex stared at her. This was either brilliant or insane. He could not tell which. The investigation began. Teams of experts from dozens of species arrived on Earth. They were given access to everything. Stock markets, trading records, communication logs, everything. What they found confused them completely. Human stock markets made no logical sense. Prices went up and down based on emotion and rumor. Humans bought stocks because of something called memes. They made investment decisions based on feelings and hunches. One investigator found records of humans buying stocks in a failing company just because they liked the company's products. Another found humans selling perfectly good stocks because they had a bad feeling. There were concepts like panic buying, fear of missing out, and emotional trading. The human economy was chaos held together by hope and coffee. The lead investigator, a logical being named Rational Mind 300, presented his findings to the council. After extensive analysis, he said, I can conclude that humans could not have manipulated the Helix exchange. They barely understand their own markets, let alone ours. Their trading systems are based on emotion and intuition, not logic and calculation. They lack the necessary sophistication to execute the type of manipulation that occurred. The council chamber was silent. Then who did manipulate the market? Elder Crixanon asked. A young human stepped forward. His name was Marcus Zhang, a data analyst who had been reviewing the investigation data. He looked nervous but determined. If I may, Marcus said, I think I found something. He displayed data on the holographic screen. I noticed a pattern in the trading records. It is subtle, but there. Someone was making very careful moves, setting up the crash weeks in advance. The pattern matches trading styles from members of the Sovereign Collective. How did you find this? Rational Mind 300 asked. We analyzed the same data and found nothing. You were looking for logic, Marcus explained. I looked for emotion and motivation. I asked myself, who benefits from this? Who would want humans expelled? When I started with that question, the pattern became clear. More data appeared on the screen. Marcus had traced the manipulation back to specific traders, all connected to the Sovereign Collective. The evidence was perfect. Too perfect to deny. The council erupted in chaos. The Sovereign Collective representatives tried to defend themselves, but the evidence was overwhelming. They had been caught. Within days, the conspirators were removed from their positions. The Sovereign Collective was dissolved. Formal apologies were issued to humanity. But the damage to their reputation was permanent. They had tried to frame an innocent species. They had caused a massive economic crisis. And they had been caught by a young human using intuition and pattern recognition instead of pure logic. After everything was resolved, Zelvex met with Ambassador Chen again. You knew, he said. You knew you would be framed. I suspected, Chen admitted. There were too many species uncomfortable with how quickly human culture was spreading. Someone was going to push back. I just did not know how or when. And you were prepared, Zelvex said with something like admiration. You turned their attack into an opportunity. Now everyone knows that humans are innocent, and the Sovereign Collective is guilty. We humans have learned a lot from our own history, Chen said. We know that when you are being honest and transparent, accusations cannot stick. Truth has a way of revealing itself. The council will have to grant you full membership now, Zelvex said. After this, they have no excuse to keep you restricted. Maybe, Chen said with a smile. We will see. One step at a time. But both of them knew the truth. Humans had proven themselves again. They had survived an attack designed to destroy them. They had done it not with weapons or threats, but with transparency, intelligence, and trust in the truth. The Sovereign Collective had tried to play by the old rules. They had tried to use deception and manipulation. They had forgotten that humans came from a world where those tricks were ancient history, where people had learned long ago that honesty and creativity beat corruption and rigidity. The galaxy was changing, and humans were showing everyone that change could be good. Zelvex picked up his coffee cup and took a long drink. He had developed quite a taste for the stuff. "Ambassador," he said, "I have a question. When you first offered me coffee back at our very first meeting, did you know all of this would happen?" Chen laughed. "Of course not. I just thought you looked like you could use some coffee." Zelvex realized something important. Humans did not plan everything perfectly. They just tried to be kind, stay honest, and adapt to whatever happened. That was their real strength, not calculation or logic, not perfect plans or superior technology, just basic human decency and the ability to make the best of any situation. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. 5 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Commerce Collective. 5 years that changed everything. The Council had granted humans full membership with voting rights. They now had a permanent seat and equal say in all major decisions. But more importantly, they had changed what it meant to be part of the collective. Ambassador Chen stood in the grand hall of the collective's headquarters, looking out at representatives from thousands of worlds. Today was special. Today, the Council was voting on the new cultural exchange program that humans had proposed. The program would establish embassies focused not just on trade and politics, but on sharing art, music, food, and ideas. It would encourage species to learn from each other's cultures instead of just exchanging resources. It was a radical idea. For millions of years, the collective had been about commerce and contracts. Now humans were asking everyone to value something that could not be measured or sold. Elder Crixnon called for the vote. Chen held her breath. The result was overwhelming. 9,743 species voted in favor. Only 12 voted against. The cultural exchange program was approved. The hall erupted in celebration. Species from across the galaxy stood and made their traditional sounds of approval. Clicks, chimes, roars, and songs filled the air. Zelvex approached Chen with a broad smile on his face. Over the years, he had become one of humanity's strongest allies. He had also become Chen's close friend. "You did it," he said. "You have changed the entire galaxy." "We did it together," Chen corrected. "All of us," and she was right. Humans had not conquered the galaxy or forced change upon anyone. They had simply shared who they were, and others had chosen to join them. The changes were everywhere. Arts programs had been established on thousands of worlds. Aliens were writing their own stories, composing their own music, creating their own art. They were exploring emotions and creativity in ways they never had before. Fair trade agreements had replaced exploitation. The old model of powerful species taking advantage of weaker ones was fading away. Now species negotiated as equals, looking for outcomes that benefited everyone. The concept of win-win thinking had spread across the galaxy. Instead of zero-sum competition, species looked for creative solutions where everyone gained something. Perhaps most surprisingly, the idea of friendship had taken root. Species that once only had formal diplomatic relations now called each other friends. They helped each other not because contracts required it, but because they cared. Zelvex had even written a book about his experiences with humans. It was called Bargaining with Chaos and had become a bestseller across the galaxy. In it, he described everything he had learned about human culture and thinking. The book's most popular chapter was titled Understanding Coffee, where he explained that sometimes the most important things in life are the small comforts and connections we share with others, but not everyone was happy with the changes. A small group of traditionalist species still believed the old ways were better. They met in secret, planning one final attempt to return things to how they were before humans arrived. They decided to challenge humanity one more time. But instead of framing them for crimes or trying to expel them, they chose a different approach. They requested a formal negotiation. The leader of this group, Ambassador Vortek of the Crystalline Sovereignty, sent a message to Ambassador Chen. He wanted to discuss the future direction of the collective. He wanted to negotiate for a return to traditional values. Chen agreed to meet. She arrived at the designated location, a neutral diplomatic station with a small team. But instead of diplomats and lawyers, she brought Marcus the chef, Lisa the musician, and a few other friends. She also brought a cooler filled with beer and a deck of playing cards. Vortek was a being made of living crystal, tall and imposing. He sat across from Chen in a formal conference room, surrounded by his advisors. They all looked stern and serious. "Ambassador Chen," Vortek said, his voice like wind through glass. "We represent species who value tradition and order. We believe the collective has become too chaotic since humanity joined. We wish to negotiate a return to the established ways." "I understand," Chen said. "Change can be uncomfortable. But I have a proposal. Instead of formal negotiations, how about we play a game?" "A game?" Vortex's confusion was evident even through his crystalline face. "Poker," Chen said, pulling out the deck of cards. "It is a human game of strategy, probability, and psychology. We play a few hands. Winner decides the terms of our discussion. If you win, we talk about returning to traditional ways. If I win, we talk about moving forward together," Vortex advisors whispered among themselves. This was highly unusual, but they were confident. Poker was about mathematics and probability. They could calculate optimal strategies. They would easily defeat a human at a game of logic. "Very well," Vortex agreed. "We accept your challenge." Chen dealt the cards and explained the rules. They played several hands. At first, Vortex and his team played perfectly according to probability theory. They calculated odds, analyzed patterns, and made mathematically correct decisions. And they lost every hand. Chen was not playing by mathematics. She was reading them. She noticed when Vortex's crystalline structure flickered slightly when he had a good hand. She saw when his advisors leaned in just a bit when they thought they would win. She understood their patterns and used them. She also bluffed, making them think she had better cards than she did. She made plays that made no mathematical sense but worked because of psychology. After the fifth hand, Vortex set his cards down slowly. "I do not understand," he said. "We are playing optimally. You are not. And yet you win." "That is because you are playing against the cards," Chen explained gently. "I am playing with you. Poker is not just about probability. It is about understanding people, reading emotions, and sometimes taking risks that do not make logical sense." She picked up her beer and took a sip. "That is what humans bring to the collective. Not just logic and calculation, which you already have, but creativity, intuition, and the ability to connect with others on an emotional level." Vortex was silent for a long moment. Then something unexpected happened. His crystalline structure began to change color, shifting through different hues. "This is..." He paused, searching for words. "Fun. I am experiencing fun for the first time in my existence." One of his advisors spoke up. "Ambassador Vortex, are you well?" "I am more than well," Vortex said, and there was something like wonder in his voice. "For the first time, I understand what humans have been trying to show us. There is value in experiences beyond pure logic. There is meaning in connection and emotion." He looked at Chen. "You have won our game, but more than that, you have shown me something I did not know I was missing. I concede. Not just this game, but our entire argument. You know what?" Chen said with a warm smile. "Let's forget about winner and loser. Let's just talk, as friends, about what we want the future to look like, together." And that is what they did. They talked for hours, not as opposing sides, but as people trying to understand each other. Marcus prepared food. Lisa played music. And slowly the traditionalists began to understand. The old ways were not bad. They had served the galaxy well for millions of years. But they were incomplete. They had focused only on logic and efficiency, missing the richness of experience that comes from art, emotion, and friendship. By the end of the evening, Vortex and his group had become supporters of the new direction. They did not abandon their traditional values, but they opened themselves to new possibilities. Years later, Zelvex and Chen sat in a coffee shop on Earth, looking out at the blue sky. It was Zelvex's first visit to the human homeworld. "I have been thinking about that first meeting," Zelvex said. "When I came to Earth expecting you to sign our standard contract immediately. I was so certain of how things would go. And then I asked for a coffee break," Chen said with a laugh. "That was the moment everything changed," Zelvex said. "That was the moment I realized humans were different from every species I had ever met." "We're not that different," Chen said. "We just remember that business and life are not separate things. That the best agreements come not from contracts but from relationships. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is take a break and have coffee with someone." Zelvex raised his coffee cup. "To coffee breaks. And to friendship." Chen raised her cup to meet his. "To friendship. And to continuing to surprise each other." They drank their coffee and watched the sunset together. Two beings from different worlds, different cultures, different ways of thinking. But friends. true friends, and that, more than any contract or treaty, was what had truly changed the galaxy. The Galactic Commerce Collective had become a true community. Not just a trading network, but a family of species learning from each other, helping each other, and growing together. All because one species refused to just accept the standard terms. All because humans believed there was a better way to do things. Not through domination or superiority, but through connection and creativity. The aliens had tried bargaining with humans. They expected humans to follow the same patterns as everyone else, to be impressed by advanced technology, to accept client status without question, to play by the established rules. They did not expect humans to offer them coffee instead.